Let's do our marquee segment of the morning. It's Christmas morning because Cenk Uygur is running for president. Apparently, maybe gearing up to run. He went on Breaking Points yesterday to try and hawk his book, Justice is Coming. And I think there might be a lot of credibility to the theory that sales are slow out of the gate, and so he feels a need to attach it to a campaign of sorts. But here's Cenk Uygur explaining to Crystal and Sagar that Joe Biden can't win and that the Democrats need somebody else. And if it has to be him, then maybe he'll do it. This is slightly sped up, so we're not watching this all morning. This is about 4 minutes, but here we go.
Crystal, we are definitely in an unsolvable riddle.
Yeah.
Because the corporate Democrats say, I will not disobey. I will always bow my head. Right. And the progressives say, well, I can't run. The mainstream media will destroy me. They'll destroy my life. They'll destroy my career, et cetera, right? So how do we get past that? That's why I'm desperate enough to think maybe I should do it. And I'll tell you why. Because let's say that somebody like me gets in the race.
Yeah.
The Democratic voters are dying for an alternative. They keep saying in every poll, for God's sake, give us someone else. Give us someone else. If someone like me were to get to 20 points, do you have any idea how quick Newsom and Whitmer would enter the race?
So are you serious? Are you seriously considering?
I like how Sagar goes, And I mean, I don't know. I'd have to spend time with Sagar in person to know if that like very tight clenching of the lips is to stop himself from laughing. Because when Cenk says, if I get to 20 points, that would change the game. Here, let's watch Sagar's reaction.
If someone like me were to get to 20 points, do you have any idea how quick Newsom and Whitmer would enter the race?
So are you seriously considering?
I mean, I gotta give props. I have to give it up. I have to give it up to them for not laughing when he said that. It would have been impossible for me to contain a laugh. That's why they're the pros, man. That's why they're making the big money, because they could sit across from this fucking doofus where when he says, hey, if I get in and I get to 20 points, that'll change the game. How do you not burst out laughing at that? In what fucking world are you going to get to 20 points in a Democratic primary? You got, as Nick said, way at the top of the show, he peaked at 6 points in his home district when he ran for Congress. He peaked at 6. So what, you think you're gonna get to 20 points? How? In what world? In what world? I mean, what planet are you on? What a joke, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mentioned this earlier, but I'll say for the segment, Cenk Uygur has no constituency. Like the people who are liberal Democrats, they don't like him because he has mild criticism of the Democratic Party. Republicans don't like him because he's been a culture warrior and a loyal Democrat for the last decade or two. And then obviously anti-war leftists like myself, we don't like him because he's a pro-war Democrat who supported the Ukraine war, smeared Julian Assange, supported the Syrian war. And even the social democrat progressive Bernie type people don't even like him no more because he jumped the shark when he smeared homeless people with anti-conspiracy and supported the police state.
Right.
So he had no constituency, absolutely no constituency. Go ahead.
No, I mean, the idea that he's going to all of a sudden get to 20 points is amazing, but he goes on, he fleshes this out.
I'm considering it, and I'll tell you why.
Why hasn't it happened? RFK Jr. is at 20%. Marianne's at like 10%, something like that.
No, but RFK Jr., first of all, he's not at 20 anymore. He peaked at 20 for a brief moment until Democrats found out he's not a Democrat. Okay. Then he went. Then he dove down. And Marianne got butchered by mainstream media. They made up things about crystals, etc.
And they went to you.
I love Marianne.
Well, first of all, they didn't make shit up about Marianne. They just mostly ignored Marianne. And what do you mean they made stuff up about crystals? What? She's not a new age spiritual guru? I mean, what? What did they lie about Marianne Williamson? No, Marianne Williamson had no chance because there's no oxygen for a challenger that does not have the blessing of the Democratic establishment. If Joe Biden can't run, the Democrats will prop someone up like a Gavin Newsom or a Gretchen Whitmer. It'll almost certainly be Newsom if it comes to that, and they will have a chance. There is no oxygen for a grassroots primary challenger. That is what these people do not understand. And maybe they're not understanding it on purpose. Maybe he does understand, and this is all just a gimmick to get his book sale numbers up, because after 3 years of trying to sell it, he's finally releasing it, and the numbers aren't good. Who the hell knows? But the idea that any grassroots candidate, much less this schmuck, has a chance at breaking through is just nonsense. It's nonsense. There's no money, there's no organizing, and there's no opportunity to build that in a top-down organization, within a top-down organization like the Democratic Party. It's just not going to happen.
I'm interested what your take is too. I give Cenk Uygur maybe 2 to 3% of the vote, the Democratic Party vote, if he does run, because he's the voice that the Jimmy Dore derangement left has been waiting for to speak about the true issues, like complaining about Jimmy Dore. So I think he's going to get that 2%, 3% Jimmy Dore derangement syndrome vote.
Yeah. I mean, he owns that issue. There's no doubt about that. Nobody can top him on that. So you're right. He will dominate that demographic for sure.
You know, if she could somehow break through media, great, wonderful, etc. But it's taken a while and she hasn't broken through yet. So we need someone to be super aggressive. And if they, let me ask you this way. If you get, again, anyone, it doesn't have to be progressive, gets to 20 or 25, an outsider, right? Yeah. This whole town panics and Newsom and Whitmer go in immediately.
I do think there's a possibility of that.
I don't know, because it already happened.
Crystal,
with
what? What did you say?
They went after.
Crystal. Did you hear what Crystal just said?
I didn't hear. I was focusing on Sagar. Hold on. Let me see what she's got to say.
She said, I think that's a true possibility. Her brain is completely fried. What? Go back and listen to that part again.
Okay.
Gets to 20 or 25, an outsider, right? This whole town panics and Newsom and Whitmer go in immediately.
I do think there's a possibility of that.
I don't know, because it already happened with RFK, and they just.
Yeah. There's a
I
possibility.
do think there's a possibility. What?
Well, he said, so his strategy here, what he just said is if a progressive gets to 20 to 25%, the Democratic establishment will panic and Newsom will jump in. So his motive here is not to win the nomination. It seems like his motive here is to cause disruption into scaring the establishment to replace Biden with Newsom. That's what he's basically outlining there. And that's absurd because first of all, he does the same thing that a lot of people in this space, in his sort of section of this indie media space, do. He makes the same miscalculation that only a progressive can scare the establishment. Whereas what Sagar is about to say here is, look, RFK got that far and it didn't scare them. RFK is a bigger threat to the establishment than Bernie Sanders. There's no doubt about that, right? Because Bernie Sanders proved to be a pushover in the end, right? And RFK is now chirping about running independent. So the idea that only a progressive can threaten the Democratic establishment and frighten them is nonsense. RFK gave them a little scare. They dealt with it. They wrote it out. They'll do the same thing if this putz gets to 20%. Nothing is going to stop them except the realization that Biden is unviable, at which point they will switch to Newsom. All of this other shit is just a giant clout chase. That's all it is. That's all it is. The idea that the progressive movement is going to influence the Democrats into making any decision at all is just wish casting nonsense. And I think Sagar pours cold water on that right now, if I'm not mistaken. Let's take a look.
Ignored him and they went after him. And he,
that was
down.
Yeah, there we go.
No, because it already happened with RFK and they just ignored him and they went after him. And he,
that was before when they were convinced that Biden was going to win. And RFK, everybody knew was a flash in the pan because he's not really a Democrat.
Maybe.
What the fuck does that mean? Not really a Democrat. What does that mean? What difference does that make?
Now, Nancy Pelosi Democrats, what he calls a corporate Democrat, they don't view Cenk Uygur as a real Democrat. Right. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
exactly. Well, yeah,
that logic applies to you.
Right. Right. They'll say you're not a real Democrat too. Exactly. Exactly. But this idea that, well, the RFK example doesn't count, even though the RFK example just like completely refutes my entire premise. I'm going to say that doesn't count because he's not a real Democrat. Right? I mean, just nonsense.
Yeah, Uygur just destroys him immediately while Crystal was nodding along like, yeah, actually, you got a point.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me more about your thinking.
Yeah.
Timeline. What are you weighing? How serious are you? Give us the details.
So I already thought about it before, and I rejected it because I know what they're going to do. You're an outsider, radical. They're going to dredge up things from 1987, and when you were a junior in junior high school.
They already did that to you.
I think they did that to you.
Yeah,
that's right.
Of course.
They're going to talk about how I was complaining that women wouldn't fuck me when I lived in Miami. I don't feel like having an answer for that again. That's going to be a headache. But hey, maybe I'll do it. Fuck it.
Honest, the number one problem is mainstream media.
Sure.
Mainstream media is the shock troops of corporate politicians, both corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans.
Yeah.
Their job is to eviscerate any outsider. So that's why do you think progressives aren't running? I've talked to at least half a dozen progressives and tried to convince them to go in the race. And they're like, I don't want my life ruined. Who's going to ruin their life? Joe Biden? He's in a bunker somewhere. No, it's going to be ABC and NBC and CBS and CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post. They're going to go to any outsider and shred him to pieces.
They understand that there's no point in running an unwinnable race. First of all, I would just like to call your bluff there and ask, who are these half a dozen progressives who you tried to get to run? Because I doubt the honesty of that claim, number one. Number two, to the extent that they said it's not worth the trouble, they're correct, because it's a rigged game. They have no chance at winning, and it's all risk, no reward. Like, they're just creating this completely false construct where anybody who doesn't challenge Biden for the Democratic nomination is being a pussy. It's like, no, actually, choosing not to fight an unwinnable fight that has proven over and over again to be a complete waste of time does not make you a pussy. It makes you just like a normal, rational person. Yeah. And this guy, for whatever reason, is now chirping about his own attempt to, quote unquote, disrupt.
Sure.
And I'm now so desperate for making sure that we win that I think I'm already destroyed, right? Like, they've already attacked me 10,000 times, right? So come at me, bro. So, Crystal, it's crazy for me to consider it, right?
Yeah.
But that's the times we're in. If literally no one else will do it. It's insane. So I don't want to go quietly into that good night. And
hey, Cenk, let me say this. If it stops you from doing it, I'll do it. How about that? What if I do it? Should I do it? Let me know in the chat. Just to stop Cenk from doing it, right? He's complaining no one else wants to do it. What if I step in? That's why maybe Nick, how old are you? Or maybe you don't want to answer that, but are you old enough to be president yet?
Nope, 31.
Oh, all right.
32?
So maybe CJ will be my running mate then. I need somebody old enough to be my running mate. All right. Well, poured cold water on that, but all right.
Right now,
You could be Secretary of State. You'd be a good Secretary of State. I'll keep a cabinet spot open for you.
Yeah.
If I decide to challenge.
I think I'll wreck at press secretary too, because I'll just have fun trolling these motherfuckers.
That's actually true. Yeah, you would make a good press secretary. It's interesting. All right, I'll have to put my thinking cap on.
100% on a track to go quietly into that good night.
So what's the timeline, as Crystal said? When are you going to decide?
No, if I'm going to do it, if
now they're
gonna
interested. Like, now if you look at like Saga and Crystal's body language, they're all like leaning in now because now they know they have a scoop. They're like, wait a minute, is this fucking guy is he actually serious? Because he sprung this on them. He wasn't planning on. I don't think they knew going into the interview that he was going to do this.
They are in shock. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, especially Saga with the biting the lip as soon as he said, "Hey, I can get to 20%." Indeed.
So
when are you going to decide?
No, if I'm going to do it, if anybody's going to do it, they got to go now.
Yeah.
Well, announce it.
Have you thought about staff? Have you thought about a plan? Have you reached? I mean, we know donor networks, all those sorts of things. Have you started taking real steps?
So if you're going to run a campaign this late, you can't go traditional, right? Mm-hmm. You can't be like, oh, I'm going to collect endorsements from politicians. Oh, and I'm going to build up my base tiny bit. No, you got to go and hope for a grassroots tsunami. The good news is when I ran for Congress, I mean, it was a tiny little race. We raised like 1.3 million in 3 months. I mean, if anybody can raise money, it's me from the grassroots, right? And I'm a successful businessman.
What? As Nick said earlier, your campaign for Congress was a colossal, embarrassing failure. I mean, an absolute total failure. You got less than 10%. What did you say, Nick? You got 6.6?
Yeah, 6.6. So like you can tell with the debate with Brown Joy Grade and literally almost any appearance that Cenk Uygur makes, this guy has lost his mind. Like this, like even if you thought poorly of Cenk before, like I've never been a Cenk fan, but public opinion on this guy had never been so low between his recent performances. This guy sounds like a maniac, and his brain is so far gone. He is so delusional. He conjured up a fantasy where somehow he's gonna do what RFK Jr. couldn't do. Like he's gonna do what Bernie struggled to do. He's gonna do something that Marianne Williamson gonna do. This deeply unpopular, deeply unliked person with no constituency is somehow gonna mobilize a grassroots campaign. And people ask me to run all the time, Keaton. Like, and I'm like, and whenever I get that question, I'm like, hell no, because I couldn't possibly imagine having the ego to think that I'm the guy that can change shit. And people always get upset when I'm like, I don't know why you guys think I'm gonna be the fucking guy that can change shit. I don't think I can, right? That's what a normal person would say. Meanwhile, Cenk is like, I choose myself. I volunteer myself. I am the one guy that can do this. Unbelievable. Anyway, go ahead, Keaton.
No, it's okay. We can let it play.
Say so myself. I have some credibility in running things, managing things, etc. So have I reached out to staff? I have. Okay. Now the problem is everybody thinks, well, how the hell are we going to beat these guys, right? So if I go in, it's going to be threadbare staff, threadbare website, and we're going to see, is there momentum? Because if there isn't momentum and people go, no, Biden, even if he's in the 20s, I don't care. I don't mind losing. I don't mind losing. You're being impolite, which is totally possible, right? So if that's
I think there's a decent contingent though. I think that.
Yeah, and if that's the case,
like Democratic voters think that. And first of all, the idea that you're going to get into the 20s is just absolutely ludicrous. It's absolute fantasy land. But suppose you did. Yeah, what Sagar said is, actually, they will just say you're being impolite and out of line. These are Democratic voters we're talking about. This is why it's so important. This is another thing that Cenk sort of reveals here. It's something that I've made the point since the implosion of the Bernie 2020 campaign, when he went from being front runner to loser in just a few days of bad media coverage in the run up to Super Tuesday. I said a lot of progressives, Cenk is guilty of this here. I think Brianna Joy Gray is guilty of this to a certain extent, although not to as large an extent, at least not anymore, I don't think. Kyle, Crystal, they all assume that the voters are actually on their side and that they only have to muster up the courage to go in and vote progressive. That's not true. The Democratic primary voter base are brainless shitlibs who will do whatever MSNBC tells them to do, no matter what. So if Cenk gets to 20%, which again, we're now in an alternate universe now. Like this is no longer a serious conversation because we're drifting off into a parallel reality where Cenk Uygur gets to 20%. He gets to 20%. MSNBC says he's dividing the party. He's not a real Democrat. Joe Biden is the incumbent. We have to stick with him. And the Democratic voters will obey because that is what they do. If anyone is going to replace Joe Biden on the ticket, it will be after Joe Biden drops out and the DNC picks who that replacement will be. Most likely that will be Newsom at this point. That is the only chance that Joe Biden will not be on the ticket next year. And I actually think it's a fairly good chance. I think they are trying to angle for excuses to get Biden off the ticket. But Biden off the ticket doesn't mean an open primary where everybody has a fair shot and there's an opportunity for a progressive insurgent to come in and make a splash. No, Biden off the ticket means the DNC chooses his replacement. And it will be almost certainly Newsom. If not him, probably Whitmer. But Newsom seems to be the guy. And that's it. End of story. So this is just an absolute clown show that this guy put on there.
Yeah, that's such a great point regarding Blue MAGA. And the reason why a lot of these people have this delusional belief that Democrats will turn if they're just nice and they have a good message is low-key Democrat apologia, because we understand that Blue MAGA is as big as a cult as the Republican Party. These people believe that Republicans are in a unique cult.
Right.
The DNC code is so strong that Medicare for All activists voted for a guy who said that he's going to veto Medicare for All.
Right. Right. Exactly.
The DNC code is so strong. Sunrise and climate activists voted for a guy like Joe Biden, who literally was bragging about he's going to expand public drilling on the campaign trail. On the campaign trail, they were saying we're going to expand fracking. And they were still apologizing for him. And then he bombed the Nord Stream pipeline, drilled more than Donald Trump, and they still propping him up. That's how big the code is. You guys think you guys going to win an average Blue MAGA code is over? You're not. There's 50% of the country who do not vote. And these are the people that you went over if you want to build any sort of movement. And that is not what Cenk Uygur is going to build. Because most importantly in this story, and I mentioned this earlier, the reason why Cenk Uygur is not going to get any traction because no one likes him, especially on the far left, because he is pro-war. Why do we need another pro-war candidate here?
Right.
Cenk Uygur has zero criticisms of the Democratic Party policy in Ukraine, just like Marianne Williamson. Why are you running to be commander-in-chief if you support Democratic Party foreign policy? You had Cenk Uygur, who famously smeared Julian Assange. You had Cenk Uygur, who famously took the Democratic Party in neocon side regarding Syria. So why are you even running? If your focus is on domestic issues and if you're actually serious, why not run for Congress? You can make a stink there, right? They're not serious though.
Please clap.